Christmas Eve, 26 years old, standing in the snow outside my childhood home, holding a battered suitcase. My parents just slammed the door after discovering I had been secretly helping their business rival through my girlfriend's father. My sister Madison peered through the window, smirking with satisfaction. Snow falls harder, temperature dropping below freezing. I realize I have nowhere to go, no money, and my phone just died. The family business I was supposed to inherit is now lost forever. Christmas lights mock me from every house except my own. I wander through the affluent neighborhood where I grew up, each decorated house, reminding me of what I have lost. The Hendersons' place glows with thousands of twinkling lights wrapped around their oak trees. The Johnsons have their traditional nativity scene displayed on their front lawn, complete with life-size figures and a glowing star. Every home tells a story of warmth, family gatherings, and holiday joy. Every home except the one I just left behind. My feet carry me automatically toward Riverside Park, the same place where I used to play as a child during summer afternoons. Now in the dead of winter, it looks like an abandoned wasteland. I find myself at a snow-covered bench under a broken streetlight, its flickering bulb casting eerie shadows across the frozen ground. My breath creates clouds in the frigid air as I sit down, feeling the cold metal seep through my jeans immediately. I cannot stop thinking about how everything went wrong. 6 months ago, I fell in love with Sarah, not knowing her father was Thomas Blackwood, my family's biggest business competitor in the construction industry. Sarah had shoulder-length auburn hair and green eyes that sparkled when she laughed. She worked as a marketing coordinator for what I thought was an unrelated company downtown. We met at a coffee shop on 5th Street when she accidentally spilled her latte on my laptop. Those early days felt magical. Sarah would ask innocent questions about my work, showing genuine interest in construction projects and business strategies. I thought she cared because she loved me. I shared stories about upcoming bids, client concerns, and company innovations over candlelit dinners and weekend getaways. I talked about my father Harold's vision for expanding into sustainable building materials, my mother Eleanor's careful management of company finances, and even Madison's ideas for modernizing our marketing approach. My father Harold had built Castellano Construction from nothing, starting with a single pickup truck and a toolbox 32 years ago. He worked 18-hour days, missed family dinners, and sacrificed vacation time to establish our reputation for quality craftsmanship and honest dealing. Harold always said that in construction, your word is your bond, and our family name meant something in this city. When Harold discovered I had been unknowingly sharing company secrets through pillow talk with Sarah, who was actually a corporate spy sent by her father, the betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. I genuinely loved Sarah and never realized she was using me. The confrontation 3 hours ago was brutal beyond description. My mother Eleanor stood silent in the corner of our living room, while Harold called me a traitor to everything our family had built. Madison accused me of destroying their legacy for some girl I barely knew. 26 years I have invested in you, Harold shouted, his face red with anger and disappointment. 26 years of teaching you this business, preparing you to take over, showing you the difference between right and wrong. And you throw it all away for what? A pretty face and sweet words. Eleanor finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Arthur, how could you not know? How could you be so blind to what was happening? Madison, 2 years younger but always eager to prove herself superior, delivered the final blow. Maybe he did know. Maybe he wanted us to fail so he could start fresh somewhere else. Maybe Sarah offered him something better than what we could give him. I tried to explain that I had no idea about Sarah's true identity or her father's plans. I begged them to understand that I was manipulated, that my feelings were real even if hers were fabricated. But the damage was done. Thomas Blackwood had already used the information to steal 3 major contracts worth $12 million deals that would have secured our company's future for years. Now I shiver uncontrollably, my thin coat inadequate against the bitter wind that cuts through the park like a knife. My fingers grow numb inside my gloves as I fumble with my dead phone, hoping it might somehow spring back to life and connect me to anyone who might help. The temperature has dropped to 15 degrees, and my breath forms ice crystals that fall onto my lap. Christmas Eve church bells ring in the distance, their melodious chimes carried on the winter air from St. Mary's Cathedral 6 blocks away. Families walk past on the sidewalk bordering the park, bundled warmly in matching coats and scarves. Parents carrying wrapped gifts, while children skip excitedly beside them. Nobody notices the young man slowly freezing on the bench, becoming just another shadow in the urban landscape. A group of carolers passes by, their voices harmonizing on Silent Night as they move from house to house, spreading holiday cheer. Their words drift across the park. All is calm, all is bright. But nothing feels calm or bright from where I sit. My stomach growls, reminding me that I have not eaten since breakfast, too nervous about the family meeting to manage lunch. The irony is not lost on me that I am experiencing my lowest moment on what is supposed to be the most hopeful night of the year. Christmas Eve represents new beginnings, forgiveness, and family unity. Instead, I find myself completely alone, rejected by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, questioning every decision that led me to this frozen bench. My phone suddenly buzzes with one final surge of battery life. A text message from Sarah appears on the cracked screen. "Arthur, I need you to know that everything I told you about my feelings was true. I really did fall in love with you. But it is too late now. My father already used the information to steal those contracts. I am so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you or your family. I tried to stop him, but he said it was business, nothing personal. I wish things could have been different between us. Please forgive me someday." The phone dies completely after I finish reading, taking with it my last connection to the outside world. The message leaves me feeling even more confused and heartbroken. If Sarah truly loved me, why did she not warn me sooner? Why did she not find a way to protect my family from her father's schemes? Was her confession genuine, or just another manipulation designed to ease her guilty conscience? 2 hours pass like decades. My lips have turned blue, and my body shakes violently from hypothermia setting in. The sensation in my toes disappeared completely 15 minutes ago, and I worry about frostbite damage. Through blurred vision caused by exhaustion and cold, I spot a figure stumbling across the park from the direction of the old stone bridge. An elderly African-American woman, maybe 70 years old, walks barefoot through the snow. Her feet leave dark spots of blood on the white ground with each step she takes. She has a strange purple tint to her face from severe frostbite, and her lips appear almost black in the dim light. She wears only a thin hospital gown covered by a threadbare shawl that provides no protection against the elements. The woman moves in an erratic pattern, sometimes stopping to look around in confusion, sometimes talking to herself in words I cannot quite make out from this distance. Her gray hair hangs loose and tangled, and she appears disoriented, as if she does not know where she is or how she got here. I force myself to stand on unsteady legs, my joints stiff from sitting in the cold for so long. Despite my own desperate situation, I cannot watch another human being freeze to death just 50 yards away. Every step toward her feels like walking through quicksand, my muscles protesting against movement after being motionless for hours. As I get closer, I can hear her mumbling incoherently about finding the children and something about Pampa promises to keep before Christmas morning. Her voice carries a note of urgency mixed with confusion, as if she is searching for something critically important, but cannot remember exactly what. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I call out when I am close enough for her to hear me. She stops walking and turns toward my voice. Her eyes have a distant quality, unfocused and glassy, but when she sees me, something shifts in her expression. She seems to study my face intently, as if trying to place me in her memory. So cold. She whispers her words barely audible above the wind. "Lost the children. Have to find them before morning comes." I realize she has probably escaped from somewhere, possibly suffering from dementia or experiencing a medical emergency that left her wandering the streets confused and vulnerable. Her feet are cut and bleeding from walking on ice and rough pavement. The hospital gown suggests she was receiving medical care somewhere and either left voluntarily or wandered away without anyone noticing. Without hesitation, I kneel down and begin unlacing my expensive leather boots. They are the last valuable thing I own, a birthday gift from my parents 2 years ago when times were better and our relationship was strong. The leather is soft and warm, lined with wool that has kept my feet comfortable, even in this harsh weather. Here, let me help you, I say, gently approaching her the way someone might approach a frightened animal. These will protect your feet. The boots are several sizes too large for her, but they will provide crucial insulation and protection from the frozen ground. I help her sit on a nearby park bench and carefully slide her injured feet into the warm leather. She winces as the boots make contact with her cuts, but she does not resist my efforts. Next, I remove my coat, leaving myself in just jeans and a wool sweater. The cold hits me like a physical blow, but I wrap the coat around her shoulders and pull it tight. She needs the warmth more than I do right now. The woman's eyes suddenly focus with startling clarity, as if a fog has lifted from her mind. She looks directly at me with sharp intelligence that contradicts her previous confusion. Her voice becomes stronger, more controlled. "What is your name, child?" she asks. "Arthur Castellano," I reply through chattering teeth. She nods slowly, as if my name confirms something she already suspected. Then she reaches into a hidden pocket of her hospital gown and pulls out an old silver locket tarnished with age, but clearly valuable. She presses it into my hand with surprising strength. "Keep this safe," she instructs, her voice carrying an authority that seems to come from nowhere. "Someone will come for you within the hour. Trust no one except the man who shows you this symbol." She points to a small area of snow at our feet and traces a pattern with her finger. A cross, but not a traditional Christian cross. This one has equal arms with small circles at each end, like an ancient Celtic design I have seen in history books. "I do not understand," I say, looking at the locket in my palm. It is warm despite being exposed to the cold, and I can feel intricate engravings on its surface. The woman struggles to stand, using my arm for support. "You will understand soon enough. Your kindness tonight has changed everything, Arthur Castellano. More than you know." "Wait," I call out as she starts to walk away. "You need medical attention. Let me help you get to a hospital." She turns back toward me, and for a moment her face looks completely different. Younger, stronger, more focused. "The address is 1247 Pemberton Avenue. Remember that." Then suddenly her knees buckle, and she collapses onto the snow-covered ground. I catch her before her head hits the pavement, and as I do, she whispers one more thing so quietly, I almost miss it. "Tell them about the will. Tell them about Richard's last request." Her body goes completely limp in my arms. She is still breathing but unconscious, her pulse weak but steady. I cradle her gently, trying to figure out what to do next. My phone is dead, I have no way to call for help, and I am not sure I have the strength to carry her to safety. That is when I hear the sound of multiple car engines approaching from several directions simultaneously. The sound grows louder, echoing off the empty buildings surrounding the park. Through the falling snow, I see headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Not just one or two vehicles, but many, their engines rumbling in coordination as they converge on our location. 19 identical black BMW sedans slowly surround the park from every possible entrance and exit. Their headlights create an almost supernatural glow in the falling snow, illuminating the entire area with harsh white light that makes me squint and shield my eyes. The vehicles move with military precision, positioning themselves to block any escape routes. My heart pounds as I realize this cannot be a coincidence. These people were looking for the woman lying unconscious in my arms. But who are they? And how did they know where to find her? The timing is too perfect, their coordination too professional for this to be anything other than a planned operation. Men in dark suits emerge from each vehicle simultaneously, as if responding to some unheard signal. They are all dressed similarly in long black overcoats, gloves, and polished shoes that seem impractical for snowy conditions. Their movements are coordinated and professional, suggesting military or law enforcement training. None of them appear to be carrying visible weapons, but their bearing suggests they are prepared for any situation. I count at least 30 men spread across the park's perimeter, each maintaining his position while watching our location with focused attention. The silence is eerie, broken only by the sound of car engines idling and snow crunching under their feet as they adjust their positions. A tall man with silver hair detaches himself from the group and begins walking toward me. He moves with military precision, his posture straight and his pace measured. Unlike the others, he appears to be unarmed and non-threatening, but there is an unmistakable authority in his bearing that suggests he is accustomed to command. I stand protectively over the unconscious woman, my body trembling from both cold and fear. The man's approach feels surreal, like something from a movie rather than real life. Everything about this situation defies logic and reason. "Step away from her son," the man says calmly when he is close enough to speak without shouting. His voice carries a slight southern accent, cultured and educated. "We are here to help." "Who are you?" I demand, my voice cracking with cold intention. "What do you want with her?" The man reaches slowly into his coat, telegraphing his movements to avoid alarming me. Instead of a weapon, he produces a small silver pin in the shape of a cross. Not a traditional cross, but the same unusual design the woman traced in the snow. The cross has equal arms with small circles at each end, exactly matching the pattern she showed me. "My name is Colonel James Morrison, United States Army Intelligence, retired," he says, holding the pin where I can see it clearly. "The woman you helped is Elizabeth Pemberton." My eyes widen at the mention of that name. Pemberton, like the address she whispered to me before collapsing. 1247 Pemberton Avenue. The coincidence seems impossible. Colonel Morrison continues, his voice steady and reassuring despite the bizarre circumstances. "Mrs. Pemberton escaped from Mercy General Hospital 3 hours ago. She was being treated for severe hypothermia after a car accident earlier this evening. In her confusion, she wandered 15 miles through the city. You saved her life by protecting her from the elements." As if summoned by his words, paramedics emerge from one of the BMW sedans carrying a stretcher and medical equipment. They move quickly but carefully toward us, their faces focused and professional. I step aside reluctantly, still confused about what is happening, but relieved that Elizabeth will receive proper medical attention. The paramedics work efficiently, checking Elizabeth's vital signs and wrapping her in warming blankets before carefully lifting her onto the stretcher. Their movements suggest they are familiar with hypothermia cases and know exactly what needs to be done to stabilize her condition. As they prepare to load her into an ambulance that has materialized from somewhere among the BMW convoy, Elizabeth briefly regains consciousness. Her eyes are clearer now, more focused than when I first encountered her. She looks directly at me with an intensity that seems to pierce through my confusion. "Tell them about the will," she whispers urgently, her voice stronger than I expected given her condition. "Tell them about Richard's last request." Colonel Morrison's expression changes completely when he hears those words. The professional calm that has characterized his demeanor since arriving suddenly gives way to something resembling shock or recognition. "Did she just mention Richard?" he asks sharply. "Richard Pemberton." I nod, unsure whether I should be revealing this information, but seeing no alternative given the circumstances. "She told me an address too. 1247 Pemberton Avenue." Morrison pulls out his phone immediately and speaks rapidly to someone on the other end. I can only catch fragments of the conversation, but I hear phrases like "change of plans" and "be here, bring him to the estate," and "this changes everything." After ending the call, Morrison turns back to me with an expression that is both serious and excited. "Cancel the extraction," he calls out to his men. "We need to take this young man to the estate immediately." I do not understand what is happening. I say, my voice rising with frustration and fear. I just tried to help someone who was freezing, and now there are dozens of cars and men in suits, and talk about wills and estates. This is insane. Morrison places a firm but gentle hand on my shoulder. I know this seems overwhelming, son, but I promise you that everything will be explained shortly. Right now, I need you to trust me and come with us. What happened here tonight is more significant than you realize. He gestures toward one of the BMW sedans, its rear door already open and waiting. The interior looks warm and comfortable, a stark contrast to the frozen park where I have spent the past 3 hours. Despite my confusion and apprehension, the prospect of getting out of the cold is almost irresistible. Am I under arrest? I ask. Am I in some kind of trouble?
Quite the opposite, Morrison replies with what might be the beginning of a smile. You may have just experienced the best night of your life, Arthur Castellano. You just do not know it yet.
The convoy of BMWs travels through the city like a presidential motorcade, their headlights cutting through the snowy streets with purpose and authority. I sit in the back seat of the lead vehicle wrapped in a heated blanket that one of Morrison's men provided, watching the familiar landmarks of my hometown pass by in a blur of light and shadow. We drive for 25 minutes, leaving behind the middle-class neighborhoods where I grew up and entering an area of the city I have only seen from a distance. These are the estates of the truly wealthy, hidden behind high walls and electronic gates, where property values start in the millions and climb toward numbers that most people cannot comprehend. The convoy slows as we approach a massive wrought iron gate bearing an ornate letter P intertwined with decorative metalwork. A brass plaque reads, Pemberton Estate founded 1892. The gates open automatically as our vehicles approach, revealing a private road lined with ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. As we drive through the grounds, I see a mansion that makes my family's house look like a modest cottage. The main building is constructed of gray stone in Gothic Revival style, with towers, turrets, and enough windows to house 50 families comfortably. Illuminated fountains dot the landscape, and perfectly manicured gardens stretch in every direction despite the winter season. The circular driveway leads to a covered portico supported by massive columns. As our vehicle stops, uniformed staff members appear from nowhere to open car doors and provide assistance. Everything about this place speaks of wealth accumulated over generations of old money and established power. Inside the mansion, I am led through hallways lined with oil paintings of distinguished-looking men and women in military uniforms and formal attire. The floors are marble covered with Persian rugs that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light from soaring ceilings, and fresh flowers arranged in expensive vases add color to the elegant interior. Morrison guides me to a study that feels like something from a British manor house. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves line the walls filled with leather-bound volumes that appear to be genuine antiques rather than decorative reproductions. A massive oak desk dominates one end of the room, while comfortable leather chairs are arranged near a fireplace where real logs crackle and burn. Military memorabilia fills the spaces between books. Swords, medals, flags, and photographs of men in uniform standing beside tanks, aircraft, and ships. This is clearly the private sanctuary of someone who dedicated his life to military service and took great pride in that commitment. Please sit down, Morrison says, gesturing toward one of the leather chairs near the fireplace. I imagine you could use some warmth and something hot to drink. A member of the household staff appears with a silver tray containing coffee-hot chocolate and an assortment of pastries. The coffee is the best I have ever tasted, rich and strong, and warming me from the inside out. After hours of cold and hunger, this simple comfort feels like the greatest luxury imaginable. Morrison takes the chair across from me, his formal demeanor softening slightly in the warmth of the study. I apologize for the dramatic nature of tonight's events, Arthur. I know this must all seem very confusing and perhaps frightening. That would be an understatement, I reply, holding the warm coffee cup with both hands and savoring the heat against my palms. A few hours ago, I was thrown out of my family's house on Christmas Eve. Now I'm sitting in what looks like a palace, talking to a retired Army colonel about someone named Richard Pemberton. Nothing about this makes sense. Morrison nods understandingly. Elizabeth Pemberton is the widow of General Richard Pemberton, one of America's most decorated military heroes. After retiring from the Army, Richard became a defense contractor and built one of the most successful companies in that industry. When he died 6 months ago, he left behind a fortune estimated at $800 million. The number hits me like a physical blow. $800 million represents wealth beyond anything I could imagine. My family's construction company, which I thought was substantial, generates perhaps $3 million in annual revenue. The difference in scale is almost incomprehensible. But here is what makes this interesting. Morrison continues pouring himself a cup of coffee from the silver service. Richard left very specific instructions in his will. He was obsessed with honor sacrifice and what he called the test of character. He believed that true worth could only be measured by how someone treats strangers in their darkest hour. Morrison stands and walks to a wall safe hidden behind one of the oil paintings. After entering a combination, he removes an official-looking document bound in blue leather. Richard secretly arranged for Elizabeth to test potential inheritors of his fortune. She would appear in various scenarios, sometimes as a homeless person, sometimes as someone in medical distress, to see how people would respond when no reward was expected. The implications of what he is saying begin to dawn on me. You mean tonight was some kind of test? Elizabeth's final test, actually. Morrison confirms, returning to his chair with the document in hand. She was supposed to return to the hospital after one last evaluation of a potential candidate. When she escaped due to confusion from her hypothermia treatment, we had to mobilize every available resource to find her before she suffered serious medical consequences. He opens the leather-bound document and shows me pages of legal text, written in formal language. According to Richard's will, whoever passes Elizabeth's final test receives $50 million and control of Pemberton Industries' charitable foundation. The only requirement is that they demonstrate genuine compassion without knowing they are being watched. I stare at the document, trying to process words that do not seem real. $50 million. The amount is larger than most lottery jackpots, enough to solve every financial problem I could ever imagine. But I am not even related to your family, I say weakly. This has to be some kind of mistake. Morrison shakes his head, his expression serious, but not unkind. Richard specifically requested that we test members of certain families involved in construction and real estate development. He wanted to identify people who had been raised with strong values, but might be facing situations that would test their character under pressure. He turns several pages in the document until he finds a specific section marked with colored tabs. Your family's name, Arthur Castellano, has been on our list for months. Richard knew your father's reputation for integrity in business dealings. Harold Castellano is known throughout the construction industry as a man who keeps his word, pays his workers fairly, and delivers quality work on time and within budget. The mention of my father's reputation brings a fresh wave of pain as I remember the disappointment and anger in Harold's eyes when he discovered my unintentional betrayal. My father probably would not want anything to do with me right now, I say bitterly. He thinks I am a traitor who destroyed everything he worked to build. That is precisely why Richard wanted to test the next generation, Morrison explains. He understood that sometimes good people make mistakes or find themselves in impossible situations through no fault of their own. He believed that true character reveals itself not in moments of triumph, but in moments of desperation and loss. The warmth of the fire and the comfort of the leather chair make the events of the past few hours feel like a distant nightmare. But the emotional pain remains fresh and raw. Learning about this inheritance opportunity feels like discovering a winning lottery ticket in the pocket of clothes destined for charity. What exactly would be required of me? I ask, still not quite believing that any of this is real.
Morrison closes the legal document and sets it on the small table between our chairs. Richard's will contains very specific provisions about how the inheritance must be used. This is not money that you can simply spend on personal luxury or revenge against those who have wronged you.
He stands and walks to the window overlooking the estate's gardens, his hands clasped behind his back, in a military posture that probably became automatic over decades of service. The 50 million comes with the responsibility to establish and operate charitable programs focused on helping people in crisis situations. You would essentially become the administrator of Richard's vision for using wealth to create positive change in the world. The prospect of managing such a massive charitable operation seems overwhelming, but also inspiring. After spending years learning the construction business from my father, the idea of building something entirely different, something focused on helping rather than profiting, appeals to me in ways I had not expected. Morrison turns back toward me, his expression grave. There is one more thing you need to understand before you make any decisions about accepting this responsibility. Richard believed that forgiveness was the ultimate test of character. If you accept the inheritance, you must use it to help others, including those who have wronged you. The weight of Morrison's words settles over me like a heavy blanket. Using the inheritance to help those who have wronged me means forgiving my parents for throwing me out, forgiving Madison for her cruel laughter, and perhaps even forgiving Sarah and her father for the deception that started this entire nightmare. That sounds like an impossible requirement, I say honestly. Right now, I can barely think about my family without feeling angry and hurt. The idea of using $50 million to help them seems counterintuitive, Morrison suggests. That was precisely Richard's point. He believed that true strength comes not from conquering enemies, but from transforming them into allies through acts of unexpected grace. Morrison returns to his chair and leans forward, his expression intense. Before you make any decisions, there are some things you need to know about your family's current situation. Information that changes the context of tonight's events considerably. He pulls out his phone and makes a brief call. "Bring the Blackwood files," he says to whoever answers. "All of them." Within minutes, a staff member arrives carrying several manila folders and a laptop computer. Morrison dismisses the staff member and opens the first folder, revealing photographs, financial documents, and what appear to be surveillance reports. Thomas Blackwood has been under federal investigation for 18 months. Morrison begins spreading the documents across the coffee table between us. His construction company has been cutting corners on safety regulations, bribing building inspectors, and using substandard materials that put public safety at risk. The photographs show construction sites with obvious safety violations. Workers without proper protective equipment, substandard concrete that failed stress tests, and electrical work that does not meet building codes. Each image is dated and stamped with FBI evidence markers. D'abord, the Bureau has been building a case against Blackwood Construction, but they needed more evidence to ensure successful prosecution. Morrison continues. That is where your relationship with Sarah became unexpectedly important to federal investigators. My head spins as the implications become clear. Are you saying that Sarah was working with law enforcement? Morrison opens the laptop and shows me surveillance footage from various locations around the city. I see Sarah meeting with men in suits outside federal buildings, accepting envelopes in parking garages, and having conversations in restaurants, while hidden cameras record everything. Sarah Blackwood has been cooperating with the FBI for 8 months, Morrison explains. When her father ordered her to get close to you to gather information about Castellano Construction, she contacted federal agents and agreed to work as an informant in exchange for immunity from prosecution. The revelation hits me like a physical blow. Every conversation Sarah and I had, every intimate moment we shared, was being monitored and recorded by federal investigators. But that also means, if she was working with law enforcement, why did my family lose those contracts? I ask, confused by the timeline of events. Morrison opens another folder containing legal documents with federal seals. The stolen contracts your father lost are actually part of a federal sting operation. Blackwood was allowed to win those bids so that investigators could document his illegal practices while he completed the work. He shows me surveillance photos of Blackwood construction sites, where federal agents disguised as workers have been gathering evidence. Every corner Blackwood cuts, every safety violation he commits. Every bribe he pays is being documented for use in his prosecution. The scope of the investigation astounds me. Dozens of federal agents have been working for over a year to build an airtight case against Thomas Blackwood and his company. My unintentional role as a source of information was just one small piece of a much larger puzzle. When will he be arrested? I ask. Morrison checks his watch. If everything goes according to plan, federal agents will execute arrest warrants at 6 locations simultaneously tomorrow morning. Thomas Blackwood, 3 of his senior managers, 2 building inspectors, and 1 city planning official will all be taken into custody on charges of conspiracy, fraud, bribery, and endangering public safety. The timing seems too coincidental. You mean all of this was planned to happen right after Christmas? Federal investigators wanted to complete their evidence gathering during the holiday season when Blackwood's guard would be down, Morrison explains. Companies tend to relax security procedures during Christmas week, making it easier for undercover agents to access sensitive areas and document illegal activities. Morrison closes the laptop and gathers the folders into a neat stack. Your family's company is not just saved, Arthur. Within 48 hours, Castellano Construction will be offered the opportunity to take over every legitimate project that Blackwood was supposed to complete. Your father's reputation for honest work is exactly what these communities need. The emotional whiplash of learning that my family's crisis may soon be resolved leaves me feeling dizzy and uncertain. After hours of believing I had destroyed everything Harold worked to build, the possibility of redemption seems almost too good to be true. But my parents still threw me out, I point out. Madison still laughed at my pain. They still believed I was a traitor without giving me a chance to explain. Morrison nods sympathetically. That brings us back to the central question: what kind of man do you choose to become? You could use this inheritance for revenge to prove your family wrong, to make them suffer for their lack of faith in you. Or you could use it to heal the relationships that were broken by fear and misunderstanding. He stands and walks to a display case containing military medals and commendations. Richard Pemberton spent 40 years in the Army facing enemies who wanted to kill him and destroy everything he fought to protect. But he learned that defeating enemies is easy compared to the challenge of forgiveness. Hatred consumes the hater more than the hated. Morrison turns back toward me, his expression serious but not unkind. The inheritance comes with one final condition that I have not yet mentioned. You must publicly forgive those who wronged you and actively work to heal the relationships that were broken. Richard called it the victory of grace over grudges. The requirement seems almost impossibly difficult, given the fresh wounds of tonight's rejection. But as I sit in this warm study surrounded by evidence of Richard Pemberton's legacy of service and sacrifice, I begin to understand what Morrison means about transforming enemies into allies. My phone, which has been dead for hours, suddenly lights up with a soft electronic chime. The charging cable connected to the chair's built-in power outlet has somehow restored enough battery life for the device to function. Dozens of missed calls and text messages flood the screen, all from my family. The first voicemail is from my father, and his voice sounds completely different from the angry man who threw me out hours earlier. Arthur, son, we made a terrible mistake. Harold's voice trembles with emotion. The news is reporting that Thomas Blackwood has been arrested by federal agents. They are saying he was under investigation for fraud and that Sarah was working with law enforcement. We know now that you were not betraying us. You were being used. Please come home. Your mother and I are worried sick about you. Madison is crying. We are so sorry, son. Please call us back. The second message is from Eleanor, her voice barely above a whisper. Arthur, my dear boy, where are you? It is Christmas morning now, and you should be here with your family. We were wrong about everything. Please forgive us. Please come home. The third message is from Madison, and her tone is completely different from the smirking satisfaction she displayed hours earlier. Arthur, I am so sorry. I was horrible to you. I said terrible things because I was jealous and scared and stupid. Please do not hate me forever. I need my big brother to come home. Morrison watches me listen to the messages, his expression understanding and patient. It seems your family has already begun to recognize their mistakes. The question is whether you are ready to forgive theirs. I set my phone on the table, overwhelmed by the emotional reversal contained in those voicemails. Just hours ago, I believed my family had permanently rejected me. Now they are begging for my forgiveness, having learned the truth about Thomas Blackwood's deception and my unwitting role in his schemes.
There is more you need to know, Morrison says gently, before you make your final decision about the inheritance.
The study doors open, and Elizabeth Pemberton enters looking completely different from the confused, injured woman I encountered in the park. She now wears an elegant navy blue dress, her silver hair is perfectly styled, and her bearing radiates intelligence and authority. The transformation is so complete that I almost question whether this is the same person. "Hello, Arthur," she says with a warm smile, settling into the chair across from me with graceful precision. "I apologize for the rather dramatic nature of our first meeting. I hope you are recovering from your ordeal in the park." "You seem much better," I reply, still struggling to reconcile this poised, articulate woman with the barefoot, confused figure I helped hours earlier. Elizabeth laughs a sound filled with genuine warmth. "I was never really suffering from dementia or hypothermia, my dear boy. The hospital gown, the confusion, the apparent medical emergency, all of that was carefully staged to create the proper testing scenario. The revelation takes a moment to fully register." "You mean everything was fake? You were never really in danger?" "The cold was real enough," Elizabeth acknowledges. "And I certainly needed those boots and coat you so generously provided. But my apparent mental confusion was part of the performance designed to see how you would respond to someone who seemed vulnerable and helpless." Morrison opens a new folder I had not seen before this one, containing surveillance photographs taken in the park. The images show me approaching Elizabeth, helping her with the boots, giving her my coat, and supporting her when she collapsed. The photos were clearly taken with telephoto lenses from concealed positions. We had teams monitoring the situation from the moment Elizabeth left the estate. Morrison explains. Her safety was never truly at risk, but we needed to create authentic circumstances that would test your character under pressure. Elizabeth reaches into her purse and removes a small electronic device that looks like a hearing aid. This allowed me to remain in contact with the surveillance teams throughout the encounter. When I collapsed, it was a signal that the test was complete, and you had demonstrated the qualities Richard was looking for. I feel a mix of relief and bewilderment. "So the address you gave me, the locket, the symbol traced in the snow, all of that was planned?" "Every detail was carefully choreographed," Elizabeth confirms, "except for your responses, which had to be genuine to have any meaning. We have conducted similar tests with 12 other candidates over the past 6 months. You are the first person who passed." Morrison shows me photographs of other test scenarios. Elizabeth disguised as a homeless woman being ignored by well-dressed pedestrians. Elizabeth pretending to be lost and confused, while potential inheritors walked past without stopping. Elizabeth appearing to need medical assistance while people pulled out phones to record video instead of offering help. "Most people failed the test completely," Elizabeth explains with a note of sadness in her voice. "They either ignored me entirely or helped only after calculating what they might gain from the encounter. You were the first person to act purely from compassion, sacrificing your own comfort and safety for a complete stranger." The weight of this information settles over me as I realize how close I came to missing this opportunity entirely. If I had been more selfish, more focused on my own problems, more bitter about my family's rejection, I might have walked past Elizabeth without stopping to help. But there is something else you need to understand. Elizabeth continues, her expression becoming more serious. "Something about Thomas Blackwood that makes your situation even more complex." Morrison opens his laptop again and navigates to a series of financial documents. Blackwood Construction was never your father's primary competitor. Thomas Blackwood deliberately targeted Castellano Construction as part of a personal vendetta that goes back 25 years. The timeline catches my attention immediately. 25 years ago, I would have been 1-year-old, far too young to be involved in any business conflicts. Harold Castellano once worked for Blackwood Construction as a project manager, Elizabeth explains. This was before your father started his own company, when he was still learning the business and trying to establish himself in the industry. Morrison shows me employment records and payroll documents from the 1990s. Harold's name appears on Blackwood Construction's employee roster for 18 months, working on residential development projects throughout the metropolitan area.
Your father discovered that Thomas Blackwood was using substandard materials and cutting safety corners to maximize profits. Elizabeth continues. Harold documented these violations and reported them to building inspectors and regulatory agencies.
The employment records show Harold's termination date followed immediately by a series of legal documents. Blackwood fired your father and tried to have him blacklisted from the construction industry, Morrison explains. When that failed, he filed false criminal charges alleging that Harold had stolen tools and materials. I study the legal documents, seeing my father's name associated with charges that were eventually dismissed, but not before causing significant damage to his reputation. Harold spent 2 years fighting these false accusations before he could clear his name and start his own company. Elizabeth adds, Thomas Blackwood cost your father time, money, and reputation out of pure vindictiveness. The scope of Blackwood's malice becomes clear as Morrison shows me more documents. For 25 years, Blackwood has been interfering with Castellano Construction's business opportunities whenever possible, spreading rumors, underbidding projects at a loss just to deny Harold the work, pressuring suppliers not to do business with your family. Elizabeth leans forward, her expression intense. When Thomas learned that you were dating his daughter, he saw the perfect opportunity for revenge. He ordered Sarah to seduce you and gather intelligence about your father's business practices, planning to use that information to destroy Castellano Construction once and for all. But Sarah contacted federal investigators instead, I say, beginning to understand the full complexity of the situation. Sarah Blackwood is not the villain in this story, Elizabeth confirms. She genuinely fell in love with you and refused to be a tool of her father's revenge. When she learned about the federal investigation, she agreed to cooperate in exchange for protection from her father's retaliation. Morrison shows me transcripts of recorded conversations between Sarah and FBI agents. Her voice is clear on the audio recordings, expressing concern for my welfare and regret about the deception her father forced her to perpetrate. Sarah has been feeding carefully controlled information to her father while providing real intelligence to federal investigators. Morrison explains. The secrets you shared with her were actually cleared by the FBI in advance. Nothing you told her compromised your family's business or competitive position. The revelation that my relationship with Sarah was not entirely based on deception brings both relief and renewed pain. If she truly loved me, why could she not find a way to tell me the truth? Why did she allow me to suffer guilt and self-doubt about betraying my family? Sarah wanted to tell you everything, Elizabeth says, apparently reading my thoughts. But federal investigators made it clear that your safety depended on your ignorance. If you had known about the investigation and changed your behavior, Thomas Blackwood might have become suspicious and potentially violent. Morrison closes the laptop and gathers the documents into neat stacks. Thomas Blackwood is not just a dishonest businessman, Arthur. FBI psychological profiles suggest he has become increasingly unstable over the years, obsessed with destroying your father, and willing to hurt anyone who gets in his way. The thought that Sarah might have been protecting me by maintaining her deception adds another layer of complexity to my feelings about our relationship. Instead of being a manipulative spy, she was an undercover ally forced to deceive me to keep me safe. Where is Sarah now? I ask. Federal protective custody, Morrison replies. She will remain there until after her father's trial, which could take months or even years depending on how vigorously he fights the charges. The possibility of reconnecting with Sarah feels both hopeful and terrifying. Our entire relationship was built on a foundation of secrets and deception, even if those secrets were meant to protect rather than harm. Could we ever build something genuine together? Elizabeth stands and walks to the fireplace, staring into the flames for a long moment before turning back toward me. Richard designed this inheritance test because he understood that true character emerges under pressure. You have demonstrated compassion, sacrifice, and integrity in circumstances that would have broken lesser people. Morrison joins her by the fireplace, both of them looking at me with expressions that combine respect and expectation. The question now is whether you are ready to accept the responsibility that comes with Richard's gift. $50 million represents enormous power to do good in the world, but it also requires wisdom, humility, and commitment to something larger than yourself. I look around the elegant study at the evidence of Richard Pemberton's lifetime of service and sacrifice, at the documents that reveal the complex web of deception and investigation surrounding my family's crisis. Everything I thought I knew about the past 6 months has been turned upside down. I need to see my family first, I say finally. I need to repair those relationships before I can think about helping anyone else. Elizabeth smiles approvingly. That is exactly what Richard would have hoped you would say. The convoy of BMWs returns me to my family's house as dawn breaks over Christmas morning. Snow continues to fall gently, but the violent storm has passed, leaving behind a peaceful blanket of white that transforms the familiar neighborhood into something magical and new. Harold, Eleanor, and Madison wait on the front porch despite the early hour and cold temperature. They must have been watching for me all night, unwilling to sleep while their son and brother remained missing on Christmas. Their faces show exhaustion mixed with worry, hope, and unmistakable relief as the convoy pulls into our driveway. When I emerge from the BMW, Harold rushes forward with tears streaming down his face. The man who threw me out in anger just 8 hours earlier now embraces me with desperate intensity, as if afraid I might disappear again. Son, we heard about Thomas Blackwood's arrest on the early morning news. He says, his voice breaking with emotion. Federal agents' fraud charges, FBI investigation. We know now that you were not betraying us. You were being used by people who wanted to hurt our family. Can you ever forgive us? I hold my father tightly, feeling the tension and anger of the past few hours drain away like water through a broken dam. There is nothing to forgive, Dad. We all make mistakes when we are scared and hurt. What matters is that we are together now. Eleanor approaches hesitantly, her eyes red from crying. Arthur, my dear boy, I should have defended you. I should have asked more questions before letting your father throw you out. I failed you as a mother. You did not fail me, Mom. I assure her, including Eleanor in our family embrace. You trusted Dad's judgment just like I would have done in your place. We were all manipulated by people who wanted to destroy us. Madison hangs back slightly, clearly struggling with guilt and shame about her behavior during the confrontation. When I extend my arm toward her, she breaks down completely and rushes into our group hug. Arthur, I was horrible to you, she sobs. I said terrible things because I was jealous that you always seemed so confident and successful. When everything went wrong, I was almost glad, because it meant you were not perfect after all. I am such a terrible sister. You are not a terrible sister, I tell her firmly. You are a human being who made a mistake. We all say things we regret when we are hurt and scared. What matters is that you recognize it and want to make things right. We stand together on the front porch as Christmas morning light filters through the clouds, a family reunited after the darkest night any of us have experienced. The BMW convoy idles in the driveway, Colonel Morrison and his men waiting patiently while we reconnect with each other. Over the following days, I explain everything that happened during my 8 hours away from home. I tell them about Elizabeth's test, Richard Pemberton's inheritance, and the federal investigation that cleared my name while exposing Thomas Blackwood's crimes. Initially, my family struggles to believe that such an enormous opportunity could emerge from such a painful situation. $50 million. Harold repeats wonderfully, shaking his head in amazement. That is more money than our family has ever dreamed of having. You could start your own construction company, build it into an empire, never have to worry about money again. That is not what I want to do with it, Dad. I explain, sharing my developing vision for how to use Richard's gift responsibly. I want to create something that helps people the way Elizabeth helped me. Something that builds communities instead of just buildings. Over the next 2 weeks, I work with lawyers and financial advisors to establish the Pemberton Community Foundation, focused on providing emergency assistance to families in crisis. The Foundation's first major project is a job training center for unemployed construction workers, giving them skills in green building technologies and sustainable construction methods. But my most important decision involves Thomas Blackwood himself. After serving his federal sentence for fraud and safety violations, he will face a choice: accept a position as a safety consultant with the Foundation, using his experience to help other companies avoid his mistakes, or continue fighting a legal system that has already gathered overwhelming evidence against him. You want to offer a job to the man who tried to destroy our family? Madison asks incredulously when I explain my plan. I want to offer redemption to a man whose hatred poisoned his life for 25 years. I reply. Richard Pemberton believed that forgiveness could transform enemies into allies. I want to see if that is true. Sarah visits me on New Year's Eve, having been released from protective custody after her father's conviction. She looks tired but relieved, free for the first time in years from the burden of deception and fear that dominated her relationship with Thomas. I really did fall in love with you, she says as we walk through the same park where I met Elizabeth Pemberton. I know I have no right to ask this after everything that happened, but is there any chance we could start over? Honestly, this time without secrets or lies. I look at the woman who inadvertently led to my greatest transformation. Sarah is beautiful and intelligent, but more importantly, she demonstrated courage by choosing to protect me, even when it put her own safety at risk. I believe in second chances, I tell her. But let's take it slow. We both have some growing up to do, and I want to make sure we are building something real this time. Sarah nods, understanding that trust will need to be rebuilt gradually after everything we have been through together. 6 months later, I stand in the completed Arthur Castellano Community Center, watching children play in the gymnasium, while their parents attend job training classes in the adjoining classrooms. The building represents everything I hope to accomplish with Richard's inheritance, a place where families in crisis can find hope, and the skills they need to build better lives. Elizabeth Pemberton now fully recovered, and a close friend joins me as I watch the activity around us. At 87 years old, she moves with the energy of someone half her age, energized by her role in managing the Foundation's day-to-day operations. Richard always said that true wealth is not measured in dollars. She reflects, but in the number of lives you improve along the way. I nod, understanding finally that my greatest victory was not inheriting $50 million or proving my worth to my family. It was learning that real strength comes from choosing love over revenge, forgiveness over bitterness, and service over self-interest. Harold approaches us wearing a hard hat and carrying blueprints for the affordable housing project that will be built adjacent to the community center. Castellano construction has expanded dramatically over the past year, but Harold remains personally involved in every project that serves low-income families. The Foundation just approved funding for 3 more community centers, he announces proudly. 1 in Detroit, 1 in Phoenix, and 1 in Jacksonville. We are going to help a lot of families build better lives. Eleanor and Madison join our small group, both wearing volunteer badges from the literacy program they help coordinate every Tuesday evening. Our family has grown closer through shared service than we ever were when we only shared DNA. Arthur, Eleanor says with a smile. Mrs. Garcia from the English classes wants to thank you personally. Her husband just got hired as a supervisor at the new solar panel factory because of the training he received here. As families gather for dinner in the community center's dining hall, I realize this is what Christmas truly means. Not perfect families or expensive gifts, but imperfect people choosing to love and support each other despite their flaws and failures. The barefoot woman who appeared in my darkest hour gave me far more than boots could provide. She showed me the path to becoming the man I was meant to be. Thomas Blackwood approaches me as the evening winds down, wearing the safety inspector badge that represents his new role with the foundation. His transformation over the past year has been remarkable, from a bitter, vengeful businessman to someone committed to protecting workers and ensuring construction safety. "Arthur," he says quietly, "I know I can never undo the damage I caused your family over all those years. But I want you to know that this opportunity to make amends has given my life meaning again. Thank you for believing that people can change." I shake his hand, seeing in his eyes the same gratitude I felt when Elizabeth first offered me a chance at redemption. "We all deserve second chances, Mr. Blackwood. What matters is what we do with them." As the community center empties and families head home for the evening, Sarah and I walk hand in hand through the snow-covered parking lot. Our relationship has developed slowly over the past months, built on honest communication and shared commitment to the Foundation's mission. "Do you ever regret accepting Richard's inheritance?" she asks as we reach her car. I look back at the building where dozens of families found help, hope, and healing tonight. Inside those walls, unemployed workers learned new skills, children received tutoring help, and elderly residents enjoyed community meals that kept them connected to their neighbors. Sometimes our greatest defeats become the doorway to our most meaningful victories. I reply, repeating the lesson Elizabeth taught me that first night. The strangers who test our character often become the guardians of our destiny. Sarah smiles and kisses me gently. "I love the man you have become, Arthur Castellano." As she drives away, I stand alone in the parking lot, surrounded by the evidence of what can be accomplished when inheritance is used for service rather than selfishness. The barefoot woman who appeared on Christmas Eve tested my character and found me worthy of Richard Pemberton's trust. Now it is my turn to test others, to offer them the same chance at redemption that transformed my life. Tomorrow morning, I will meet with the Foundation's board to discuss expanding our programs to serve veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress, single mothers trying to complete their education, and ex-offenders seeking legitimate employment opportunities. Each program represents another chance to prove that forgiveness creates more value than revenge, that healing communities matters more than accumulating wealth. Standing under the stars on this perfect winter night, I understand finally that true success is not measured by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we make possible for others. The inheritance I received from Richard Pemberton was not $50 million. It was the knowledge that character matters more than comfort, that compassion creates more lasting satisfaction than conquest, and that the strangers we help in our darkest hours often become the angels who guide us toward our brightest futures. Have you ever had a moment when helping a stranger changed your entire life? What would you do if you discovered that a simple act of kindness could transform not just someone else's day, but your own destiny? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button to let me know. Subscribe to hear more stories about the power of compassion and unexpected second chances. And please share this video with someone who might need a reminder that their darkest moments often come right before their greatest breakthroughs. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, the strangers who test our character often become the guardians of our destiny. May your kindness today create possibilities you never imagined tomorrow.